Bauxite has suddenly become the hot topic in Nigeria, and for good reason. Think about how China moves into Guinea, extracts bauxite, ships it back home, and then transforms a single vessel of ore into aluminum worth over $100 million. Multiply that by several companies doing the same thing, and the numbers get mind-blowing. Now picture Nigerians stepping into that same game. Once people here realize the possibilities, the race begins, and before long, aluminum production could explode into one of the country's largest industries. From there, the opportunities don't stop. Aluminum has byproducts that feed into countless sectors, creating an entire value chain. The truth is, Nigeria just stumbled onto a resource so massive it could completely reshape the economy. Imagine a discovery big enough to pay every child's school fees, repair roads across the nation, and still leave extra for street food and more. But here's the twist. Countries with money, technology, and military power are already circling. Some see it as Nigeria's golden ticket away from oil dependency, while others warn it could turn into yet another example of the dreaded resource curse. The story can go either way, and what happens next depends on how the government and people play their cards. So, why is bauxite suddenly such a big deal? On its own, it's just reddish soil, but once refined into alumina and then smelted into aluminum, it powers modern life. That metal is everywhere: planes, smartphones, windows, cars, power lines, and especially the electric vehicles and solar panels driving the green revolution. Global demand is expected to double by 2050, which means whoever controls the supply will hold massive economic power. Up until now, Guinea has dominated the market. Despite being a small country, it provides about half of the world's bauxite exports. When their rail system went on strike recently, global aluminum prices spiked overnight, proving just how critical bauxite really is. Now imagine Nigeria, already Africa's largest economy, stepping in with newly confirmed deposits stretching across several northern and southwestern states. Early surveys suggest at least 2.2 billion metric tons, possibly much more. Even at the conservative estimate, that's around $85 billion worth of raw ore. If Nigeria processes it locally instead of shipping it out, the value could be 10 times higher, potentially more money than oil has generated in years. What's surprising is how quietly the discovery was made. No dramatic oil rig moments or spectacular drilling footage, just maps, tests, and persistence. Back in 2019, Chinese engineers building the Lagos-Ibadan Railway kept running into unusually hard red rock. Samples eventually revealed it was bauxite, but they gathered dust in government offices until a coup in Guinea rattled global markets. Suddenly, Nigeria's deposits were thrust into the spotlight. Leaks about the reserves hit online forums. Traders reacted, and metal prices responded. By then, the Nigerian government knew it was sitting on something too big to ignore. Since then, more surveys have been conducted, though results are being kept under wraps. But the signs are obvious. Lands in states like Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo are being marked as reserve corridors. Prices for farmland are skyrocketing, and companies are approaching locals with contracts most can't even read. Farmers are being bought out with quick cash offers, just to clear space before they realize the full value of what's under their feet. It's a familiar pattern seen in resource frontiers across Africa. Move fast, secure the land, and leave communities powerless in the process. And of course, the foreign powers are already in play. France wants bauxite to feed its southern smelters. China wants to keep its aluminum industry running. And the US sees it as vital for military aircraft and other strategic needs. Each one is bringing its own tactics. China promises rail and port infrastructure loans tied to below-market exports. France offers technical aid that guarantees its companies first access. And the US slides legal loopholes into mining agreements through aid programs. Meanwhile, global commodity traders are already negotiating with local chiefs, hoping to flip licenses for massive profits. But before we celebrate too soon, Nigeria only needs to look at Guinea to see the warning signs. Despite exporting tens of millions of tons each year, most Guineans still live in poverty, surrounded by polluted red mud lakes and political instability. Nigeria has been here before with oil in the Niger Delta, where profits flowed out while communities were left with destruction and unrest. If history repeats itself, bauxite could easily turn from blessing to curse. What makes this situation even riskier is the environmental cost. Open pit mining doesn't just extract ore, it wipes out forests, farmland, and topsoil. For every ton of bauxite taken out, multiple tons of fertile land are lost forever. Without careful planning, Nigeria's bauxite boom could leave behind a scarred landscape and communities robbed of both their land and their future. Bauxite mining carries heavy environmental risks that can't be ignored. Dust laced with dangerous elements like arsenic and cadmium doesn't just hang in the air, it settles on homes, crops, and water sources. When the rains arrive, that dust turns into acidic runoff strong enough to destroy cocoa farms, cassava fields, and other key crops. Processing the ore is even worse. For every ton of aluminum produced, nearly twice as much toxic red sludge is created. This waste is stored in giant reservoirs held back by earthen dams, which are far less reliable than most reports admit. In Hungary back in 2010, one of these dams burst, releasing over 1 million cubic meters of waste that swallowed entire villages. Brazil saw a similar tragedy in 2021, leaving 7 people dead and a river system poisoned for hundreds of kilometers. Now consider Nigeria, where the rainy season unleashes nearly 1,800 millimeters of rainfall every year. Communities near Guinea's mines already show what's at stake. Residents are battling asthma rates 3 times higher than the national average, and blood tests reveal aluminum levels far above what the World Health Organization considers safe. Yet Nigeria's first environmental assessments on bauxite projects have reportedly been shallow, copy and paste documents claiming no major risk, signed by the very same figures who stand to benefit financially. Rules without accountability are worthless, and without serious oversight, Nigeria could be walking into a health and environmental catastrophe. But there's also another path, one that transforms risk into opportunity. The real money in bauxite doesn't lie in shipping raw ore, which sells for around $45 a ton. Refine it into alumina and the price jumps to $300. Turn that alumina into finished aluminum and suddenly it's worth around $1,200. The difference isn't just profit, it's jobs, technology transfer, and industrial growth. Guinea exports raw dirt while China captures the added value. Nigeria has the chance to reverse that script by building its own refineries and smelters at home. The challenge is cost and energy. A single smelter can require over $4 billion in investment and consume around 120 megawatts of power nonstop. Nigeria's power grid today barely meets a fraction of national demand, and gas supplies are far from reliable. To make aluminum production work, the country would need dedicated power plants or large-scale renewable projects with storage, plus a modern deep seaport for exports. It sounds ambitious, but it isn't impossible. The United Arab Emirates already operates one of the world's largest aluminum industries, producing more than 1 million tons annually, with nearly all of its electricity coming from solar energy. Nigeria could follow that model if every mining license is tied to a commitment. No refinery, no port, no permit. The payoff would be transformative. Every 1,000 tons of aluminum produced generates dozens of direct factory jobs and even more in supporting industries. Scale that across Nigeria's reserves, and the country could create a middle class as large as that of some developed nations. Early signs are already emerging. In Ghana, mining companies have invested in hospitals and technical colleges as part of long-term leases. In Mozambique, a coal company trained thousands of locals, who now handle the majority of industrial maintenance work. Nigeria's own Osun state has announced plans to dedicate 40% of future royalties into a sovereign wealth fund to support schools and agriculture. Ekiti has pledged to grant licenses only to companies willing to build alumina plants alongside their mines, while Ondo's youth are organizing cooperatives to supply food and services to future projects. Still, there's a darker scenario if things go wrong. Imagine Nigeria in 2035. Giant trucks tearing through communities day and night, clouds of red dust settling over classrooms, and profits leaving the country while locals are left with damaged land and broken promises. Aluminum prices soar abroad, but royalties vanish into hidden accounts. Farmers lose their livelihoods. Young people are forced into dangerous side hustles, and migration becomes the only escape. Oil has already scarred the nation with pollution and inequality. If managed poorly, bauxite could leave an even bigger wound. Avoiding that fate requires strong, deliberate policy. Experts point to 6 crucial steps. First, Nigeria should set a firm deadline by 2028. Raw bauxite exports must stop, and only refined products should leave the country. Second, mining licenses should be bundled with requirements for local refineries and power plants, with foreign ownership capped to protect national interests. Third, all royalties should go into a protected sovereign wealth fund modeled after Norway's oil fund, where only the profits can be spent, not the capital. Fourth, create a dedicated railway authority to manage transport for mining, preventing heavy trucks from destroying the nation's roads. Fifth, invest in education by building a national institute focused on aluminum science and metallurgy, ensuring Nigerians lead the industry's future. Sixth, partner with neighboring countries like Ghana and Guinea to set fair regional prices, instead of relying on benchmarks from foreign exchanges. If these policies are enforced, bauxite could lift Nigeria into an industrial powerhouse, creating jobs, strengthening the middle class, and reducing dependence on oil. But the window of opportunity is short. Lobbyists are already pressuring leaders, offering tempting deals, and painting selective pictures of clean mining operations. Once contracts are signed, undoing them is costly and politically messy, as Guinea learned the hard way. Nigeria has perhaps 18 months to set the rules before foreign companies dig in and rewrite the story to their advantage. That's why citizens matter. People don't need to wait for ministers to act. Voters can demand commitments from representatives. Investors can support funds that avoid raw exports. Farmers can document and share evidence when surveyors mark land without consent. Students and researchers can publish open data to keep the process transparent. Every action counts, because sunlight and accountability are the only tools strong enough to keep resource wealth from being stolen. Ultimately, Nigeria stands at a crossroads. This massive red ore deposit could either launch a new era of prosperity or repeat the painful mistakes of oil. History rarely offers second chances, but bauxite might just be one. If handled wisely with transparency, local refining, and national ownership, it could be remembered as the foundation of an aluminum miracle. If not, it will be yet another cautionary tale of missed opportunities. The resource itself is silent. The choices made now will decide whether it becomes the cornerstone of progress or the weight that drags another generation down.